Hello, dear friends. The lunar eclipse gave me a headache and a dream that lasted many hours. Opinion piece: Atlantis Mistakes. Unbridled ambition. Let's now repeat the same thing. They violated the law of one. Corruption and decadence. A very current moral. Golden age of Atlantis. They traveled in flying cars. Lessons for today's society. Their arrogance and ambition failed. Let's start. Humanity has continued to repeat and dramatize throughout history the same mistakes that caused the failure of Atlantis, as if we had not learnt its lessons about arrogance and excessive ambition. That is why one of the names of the Earth is Saras, which means the planet of repetition, since people stumble over the same stone over and over again without learning from the experience. Atlantis is described as a powerful and advanced society that fell from grace due to its moral decadence and uncontrolled ambition. It is a warning against arrogance and the unbridled pursuit of power and wealth, reminding us of the importance of maintaining a balance in our aspirations and values. Believing oneself superior to others is an unfortunate inheritance from Atlantis that many human beings still carry. Definition: Atlantis or Atlas Island is the name of a mythical island mentioned and described in the dialogues Timaeus and Critias by the Greek philosopher Plato, where the island appears as a military power that existed 9,000 years before the time of the Athenian legislator Solon, who, according to Plato, is the source of the story. It was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules and is described as larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined. The power of Atlantis was such that it dominated southwestern Europe and northern Africa until it was stopped by the city of Athens. At that same moment, a catastrophe, which is not described, caused the disappearance of both the island and the rival armies in a single day and a terrible night. The sea where Atlantis was located became unnavigable due to the shoals, while Athens and the people of Greece forgot the event since only a few survived. The kingdom of Atlantis formed a confederation governed by laws, which were written on a column of orichalcum in the temple of Poseidon. The main laws were those that provided that the different kings should be help each other, not attack each other, and make decisions concerning war and other common activities by consensus and under the direction of the Atlas lineage. Every 5 and 6 years, the kings met to make agreements and to judge and punish those among them who had broken the rules that bound them. Justice and virtue were typical of the government of Atlantis, but when the divine nature of the kings descended from Poseidon was reduced, pride and the desire for dominance became characteristics of the Atlanteans. According to Timaeus, they began a policy of expansion that led them to control the peoples of Libya as far as Egypt and Europe, as far as Tyrrhenia. When they tried to subdue Greece and Egypt, they were defeated by the Athenians. Lessons: Atlantis is described as a society that fell into corruption and moral decay, which ultimately led to its destruction. This part of the story can serve as a warning about the dangers of corruption and the loss of ethical values in a society. The story of Atlantis highlights the importance of maintaining high ethical and moral standards in society. corruption and moral decay can undermine the long-term stability and success of a civilization. The excessive pursuit of power, wealth, and dominance, as described in Atlantis, can lead to corruption and loss of values. This can serve as a warning to today's society about the need to balance material progress with ethical and moral principles. The story of Atlantis illustrates how even powerful and advanced societies can collapse if problems such as corruption and decay are not addressed. This reminds us that no civilization is without challenges and that we must maintain constant vigilance over our ethical integrity. Furthermore, the Atlanteans had the habit of living next to the sea, just as in today's society, and this exposed them to tidal waves. This reminds us of the vulnerability of a civilization to natural disasters. In summary, the story of Atlantis urges us to reflect on the importance of ethics, moral, and responsibility in society, as well as to consider the long-term consequences of corruption and decay. Arrogance. As is often the case with people who have too much wealth and power, the Atlanteans also wanted more. In its lust for power, this advanced civilization declared war on all the peoples of the Mediterranean. As expected, the powerful naval force of the Atlanteans barely met any resistance. They conquered and enslaved most of their technologically inferior neighbors. But in their arrogance, the Atlanteans underestimated a Greek city. According to Plato, the inhabitants of Atlantis became corrupt and decadent. They descended into immorality, greed, and power struggles. They embarked on aggressive and expansionist military campaigns, conquering nearby territories and attempting to subjugate other nations. Furthermore, the Atlanteans disobeyed divine laws and challenged the cosmic order. The Atlanteans became racist, supremacist, and imperialist, and sought to conquer the world by force to impose a world government. They were distinguished from other peoples because they wore a green beret and spoke a lingua, which is a Proto-Basque language, the father of the ancient Iberian language. They were classist because they were divided into a caste system, like in ancient India, where those at the top had all the privileges and those at the bottom were slaves. Blavatsky's writings describe Atlanteans as dark-skinned people and as the ancestors of modern Mongolia and Native American peoples. Progress. Atlantis was a huge island, bigger than Libya and Asia combined. It was populated by a race of demigods, led by powerful kings, whose lineage traced back to none other than Poseidon, the powerful god of the seas and oceans. The Atlanteans took full advantage of this connection. They created a sophisticated civilization and built huge cities at a time when the rest of the world were still in the Neolithic. Contributing to this was the fact that they lived in a true cornucopia, with abundant resources, especially metals, silver, gold, and especially orichalcum, the most precious reddish golden metal composed of an alloy of copper, zinc, and other metals. According to Lev, the civilization of Atlantis was far ahead of the current one. They moved around in what they call hovercraft today, like flying cars, which ran on celestial energy, without the need for roads as happens today. All diseases were eradicated, but their downfall began when they violated the fundamental laws of nature. And this is a very wise lesson for all of us who do not to continue in specific directions, like genetics, i.e., transplantation of organs bred from animals, with serious consequences leading to the fall of Atlantis. The golden period of Atlantis was the highest level of light consciousness ever achieved on planet Earth and in any other advanced civilization, higher than Lemuria and Mu, and higher than that of Rama and Ignatia. To this day, the civilization period of Atlantis is unknown in Earth history because the literature on the subject in the archives of the Library of Alexandria was destroyed 2,300 years ago. Civil War. Atlantis was ruled by 12 high priests who were guests from different planets in the universe. They supervised the project of the perfect human being. However, the former Dark co-creator could pit them against each other. A power struggle broke out that led to the destruction of the entire civilization in a dispute that quickly turned into space war. They extensively used climatic, tectonic, vacuum, plasma, and other types of weapons and elemental power. The Dark Priests actively suppressed people's consciousness using mind control devices. In Atlantis, an important role was played by the servophotron, a firework crystal, an accelerator of the quantum transition, by means of which the co-creators planned to raise the density of the Earth from 3D to 4D and more. At the beginning of the civil conflict, the Dark Priests almost captured it a moment before launch, but the Light Priests managed to disable the facility in time. The most of Atlantis achieved was the activation of 6 of the 12 um, of the 12 strands of the DNA, 51% of brain potential, and some high quantum, nuclear, and cosmic technology. But they descended from that level when massive moral and spiritual decline began, and the skills and knowledge were used for evil and mutual extermination. As a result, there was a rapid destruction of the fourth race. The co-creators were left with nothing, and it was necessary to find new ways to save the Earth and reborn a perfect human being. They decided to make another attempt, taking into account all the mistakes and bad experience in Atlantis. Thus was born the great concept of ancient Egypt. They thought about it for a long time and carefully prepared a new project, as well as the selection criteria. All the higher cosmic entities participated in the experiment, only in one country, and not on a global scale, as happened in Atlantis. Energy. When the disappearance began, the temple that contained the crystals that gave energy also sank below sea level. These crystals are still active, given the many and mysterious ship and flight accidents in the Bermuda Triangle, caused by navigation failures, due to interference in the compass reading by the energy emitted by the crystals. Throughout Atlantis, crystal energy grids, called pulsars, were arranged in a triangle and connected by a gold-copper alloy rod under a spherical dome that could be angled to receive specific waves of stellar, solar, and solar energy, gravitational energy. This was the system used to supply power to homes, offices, media outlets, theaters, factories, medical centers, schools, and businesses. The pulsar system was installed in each structure and worked through receiving crystals of different sizes. Concentric rings. According to Plato's description, the central capital of Atlantis was a city called Atlantis, located in the center of the island and surrounded by concentric rings of water and land. The city was magnificently designed and was a center of power and civilization. Plato described it as a large and beautiful city with temples, palaces, and artificial canals. In Spain, in 1673, the chronicler José Pellicer de Osau identified Atlantis with the Iberian Peninsula, associating the Atlantis with Tartessos. For his part, in 1922, the German archaeologist Adolf Schulten took up and popularized the idea that Tartesso was Atlantis, a hypothesis he took from the Spanish historians Francisco Fernández y González and his son Juan Fernández Amador de los Ríos. This theory was also supported by the writer Fernando Sánchez Dragó. Concentric rings have been found in the Coto de Doñana in Spain, in the Eye of the Sahara or Ricat structure in Mauritania, and they say that even the ancient Aztec city of Tenochtitlan had a similar structure, and even the city of Carthago had a circular shape. But this doesn't mean that any of them were the capital of Atlantis, but rather an imitation of it. Even the architectural design of Vatican City is said to reproduce an ancient Great Temple of Atlantis, using information extracted from the timeline. We would be surprised to discover the large number of current architectural designs that imitate those that existed in Atlantis. Even the Torre del Oro in Seville could be a copy of a very ancient structure. The description of the city includes details about the layout of buildings and canals, as well as the wealth and splendor of the city. Plato claimed that Atlantis was ruled by kings who descended from Poseidon, the sea god in Greek mythology. He also mentioned that the city was full of treasure and riches, and that its inhabitants were known for their wisdom and virtue. However, according to Plato's narrative, Atlantis ultimately fell from grace due to its moral decline and excessive ambition. The city was destroyed in a natural cataclysm, sinking into the Atlantic Ocean and disappearing forever. Location: Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which are believed to correspond to the Strait of Gibraltar. However, no precise geographic coordinates are provided. Over the centuries, there have been many theories and speculations about where it might have been located, some of which suggest locations in the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, or other parts of the world. Many theories suggest that Atlantis could have been located in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Other hypotheses have placed Atlantis in the area of Bermuda Triangle, while others have placed it in the Caribbean Sea or the Gulf of Mexico. Others have speculated that Atlantis was located in the Antarctic region before it was covered in ice. This theory is highly unlikely due to the lack of geological and climatic evidence to support such a claim, and the enormous geographical distance that separates the Antarctica from the North Atlantic. Revelations: Dolores Cannon discussed the fall of Atlantis and the Bermuda Triangle and discovered a wealth of information through her pioneering work in hypnotherapy and past life regression. She believed that this ancient civilization held crucial lessons for our modern society. In 1940, Edgar Cayce revealed that the Atlantean civilization was governed under a theocratic government called a Law of One, and had an advanced technology based on quartz crystals, which in turn depended on a large crystal. However, the Atlantean leaders abused the power of this great crystal that led them to extinction under the waters, and the survivors arrived in Egypt, where they kept their knowledge within the Sphinx. The proposed location of this lost civilization ranges from the Sahara to Antarctica and countless places in between, but one real location appears to be the Bermuda Triangle, where anomalous structures were located 2,000 meters deep using sonar, a pyramid made of some type of crystal was found. Authorities reportedly stopped further investigations. In 1977, a Russian scientist wrote that not far from the Bermuda Islands, at the bottom of the ocean, the sonar of a fishing boat had found an elevation much like a pyramid. An expedition was then organized that discovered the pyramid mountain 400 meters deep, with a height of 150 meters. American oceanographers discovered pyramids 20 years ago. The surface of the structures was smooth and they were made of glass or some type of crystal. No one was able to take photographs, but they are triple the size of the Pyramid of Giza, Azores. Towards the end of the Middle Ages, there was talk of various mythical lands and islands in the latitudes and longitudes of the Azores archipelago. Atlantis, Antil or Anti-Island, the island of Saint Brendan, the island of Brazil, the Seven Cities, and the Azores Islands. The fact is that submerged pyramids were discovered in the Azores Islands, other east of Cuba and in the mysterious Bermuda Triangle, and even in the Canary Islands. But there is also another geological theory that would place it on the mid-Atlantic plateau because it twists the Swallower area. In the North Atlantic, it separates the Eurasian and North American plates, while in the South Atlantic, it separates the African and the South American plates. This shallowest area in the center of the North Atlantic is called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. It is an underwater mountain range that extends along the floor of the Atlantic Ocean, dividing the Atlantic basin into two halves. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge is an example of an oceanic ridge, which is an underwater geological formation where tectonic plates separate. Despite being a mountain range, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is one of the shallowest areas of the North Atlantic. This is because the tectonic plates that make up the ridge are diverging, which means they are moving away from each other. In this area, magma rises from the Earth's mantle and creates new oceanic crust, making the seafloor relatively shallow compared to the surrounding areas. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.